Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Bruce Buerger. I am the new education director for the BJCP, and with me today we've got Randy Scorby. Big kudos to Randy, who is following in his footsteps. He's staying with us though, not letting him go that far. So if not, I can find you.
No escape possible.
No escape possible, yeah. So, as you know, Randy, I think was you the one who started the grader training in the past at the past conferences?
Yeah, in fact, Brian Joes and I did that. Yeah.
Yep. And we thought about doing another grader, but some of the things that came up in the since then was that we've been seeing a lot of things in the Proctor score sheets that kind of come in, and we thought it would be a good idea to kind of put something together for Proctor training as opposed to grader training this time. So just out of curiosity, raise of hands, how many people have actually proctored an exam? Okay, great, keep those arms up, keep those arms up. Now all of you people who have proctored, how many of you have actually graded? Okay, so there's a little bit of difference there. There's a little bit, but okay. We're going to do a couple slides here to start out with first, and thank you, clouds. That helps. I hope everybody can see everything okay. Try to make it big font for everybody. I know it's late in the afternoon. But we got some slides first. We're going to kind of go through some training materials here first. The first thing is there we go. We're going to go through some overviews and talk about the importance of what it is to be a proctor. And then we're going to go through some Proctor score sheets, and we're going to do some exercises that way. We're going to test my reading skills. I'm actually going to read these, I'll have you guys close your eyes and listen to me read these sheets a little bit. I know, I'll make sure it's enough that you won't fall asleep. But there's some reinforcement there that'll help emphasize the points we're going to try to make, number one. And then number two, we're going to do an interactive exercise. We're going to have you guys buddy up. And we're going to bring some beer in, and we're going to do a little bit of a Proctor exercise. So if there's questions along the way, it's kind of an informal kind of thing. Just kind of raise them up and let us know, and we'll be happy to help. So with that being said, proctors are a very critical piece of the whole grading process. The lot rides on them. They are the ones that are essentially documenting and capturing what's going on in that examination with regards to that beer. So one of the things that you constantly need to remember as a proctor is you are the eyes, nose, palate, and mouth of the grading process. It's starting with you. Whatever you capture and goes down on that Proctor sheet, that's exactly what is going to go to the graders, and what that whole set of room full of 10, 20, or 36 as today are going to be graded upon. So it's very critical that whatever you receive, whatever you capture, is written down and documented to the point where not only is it on paper, but it can also be interpreted correctly too by the people who are going to be grading this, not only the graders themselves, but also the ADs and the EDs as well too. Everything, the tasting, the examinees, right on their score sheets will be compared to what the proctor has received. Everything. So the more you get on there, the better. The problem we typically see with some of the Proctor sheets through the grading process is that there's not enough. And that does also detriment things a little bit as well, and we'll talk about that some more too. The more the proctor does note, the more the grader must rely on the consensus of the tasting examinees to validate the attributes observed. Superficial or incomplete data provided, like I was saying a little bit before, by the proctors can contribute the bad grading results. It can also contribute to the longer cycles as well too. We all want to try to keep those cycles as short as possible. What ends up happening though, as a grader, and most of you guys have probably experienced this, if you're not getting what you need from the Proctor sheets, you tend to then rely upon the consensus of what the actual examinees are putting on their sheets instead. And so you kind of get in this little bit of a back and forth kind of thing going on. And to some extent we should be doing that anyways as graders, because there are some things that the proctors could miss. However, if it's too much, then sometimes graders get a little bit of a tizzy and things get locked up, and then life creeps in, and then all of a sudden your set's a couple of weeks late. So the more you can put on there, not only noting as what is there, but also what's another thing you can note? What's not there, exactly. Okay? I'm going to keep repeating that again. It's on the top of a lot of the slides right there. You're the eyes, the ears, nose, throat of the palate of the exam graders. I put a couple of things in bold, highlighted print to emphasize, to walk away from here. Subliminal messaging. Hopefully you guys will burn into your heads there a little bit, but comment on every example. Document the full experience of it, and project, as a proctor, project your perceptions, your experience out to those graders and the ED and the AD. Let them know. Use flowery language, okay? You can reference the style guidelines, all right? You're supposed to, like I said, absence and presence, but then you're also documenting the experience of the group, but you're also documenting the style as well too. What of the style is being met? What of the style is not being met, okay? So obviously, if we're proctoring an Imperial IPA, what's one of the things we might want to look for in an Imperial IPA? Hops. What specifically with hops?
Bitterness and aroma and flavor.
And what particular attribute with an Imperial IPA, which is kind of common in a lot of them that tend to be over or dry hopped? Stringency and grassiness, yes, exactly. And that's the kind of level I'm talking about, right? Get to that level. Know those things that these things are known for. Let's talk about stouts for a second, okay? Roastiness. We're all looking for that, right? But we're looking for what with roastiness? What's that? I thought I heard it.
Balance.
Yep, the B word, yep, exactly. Balance, exactly. You don't want it to be too accurate. If it is accurate, talk about it, because roastiness is a variable kind of experience. Just because myself, who drinks coffee a lot, roastiness to me might be perceived kind of light, but to a non-coffee drinker or a tea drinker, roastiness could be very easily interpreted as something very high. Especially when it comes to the proctors. If the proctors both note it, then the grader understands there's some variance there, as well as the people, the examinees who are taking it, so that they've got a range in how they perceive roastiness as well too. Okay?
And this right here is another thing that simply can't be overstated. It's been a while that I had a Proctor Sheet a while back where the proctor found chlorophenols in the flavor. And I got to tell you, it was the most beautiful, detailed description of chlorophenols I have ever seen. In fact, I could taste the darn things just reading it. But no mention of malt, hop flavor, hop bitterness, finish, obviously balanced because it was balanced towards the phenol, but there was nothing else there. So one thing to remember, and this is what I teach my examinees in my exam prep courses, is you have to peel back those layers when you find a primary fault and find those other aspects of the beer, because I guarantee you the proctors are going to do that. Well, the exact same opposite works. The proctors need to peel back those layers and find every aspect of that beer, because the examinees will be doing that. And the graders got to have that information.
Yes. Other key points I kind of mentioned, I kind of did a little bit of an example when I talked about the hop thing before here, but primary, secondary, and tertiary. Go the different levels. There's going to be all these different hops that are out there. There's going to be a whole bunch of, I think there was one I had today was pineapple, lemon. I was kind of hesitant to put guava down there. There was just a whole different kind of fruity flavors I was getting out of the whole experience. The third one I didn't put down just because it only happened like one little fraction of a second. But note all of these, as well as high, medium, and low levels, okay? Presence or absence, comment on section and style, primary, second, tertiary, high, medium, low, and every aspect. And those are keys to walking in, for doing one proctoring. These are the instructions that we get as a proctor. I think a lot of us have already done it before, so I don't know how many people have actually taken the time to actually read the Proctor Sheet. Show of hands. I know most people don't. It's pretty simple. We show up, we put our name on a score sheet, okay? There's varying degrees with some of this sometimes. I know we did a little bit more table talk probably today than normal when we did ours ahead of time. But typically, proctors should document their individual experiences. I would stand by that. When we proctored today, we kind of shared our scores after we were all done. writing out the score sheets, so our experiences were all captured at that point in time. Most wait till the end of the exam to put all their scores together. But for the sake of speeding, going for time and getting the room turned over for the meat exam, we put our scores down early. But you definitely want to keep your observations to yourself, I think. And the main reason I'll emphasize on that one is, I forget who actually made the comment earlier today, but especially when you have senior judges and newer judges, we've all seen it as you've gone from to that, people see that national or that master pin, and they start looking over at your score sheet when you're judging in a competition. And we don't want those people to be doing that kind of a situation when proctoring. We want people to be writing down whatever they need, whatever they are experiencing and how they're experiencing it, and not be skewed. So it's a good point to kind of at least keep the conversation about what you're experiencing until after everything is done and your score sheets are turned in, at least at that point. Yeah.
Question, sometimes there's a little lull between the time you finish and the next beer comes out.
Yep.
Can the scores be added to the consensus sheet during that time, as long as there's no conversation?
I think so. I've done it the past 3 or 4 proctorings I've done. We've done it that way, and I don't think that's a huge issue. I think it's
just time, use it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I'm gonna, if I see that you put a 20 and I put a 40, I'm not gonna rip up my sheet with comments right there at that moment because I don't know what the difference is.
Right.
But and that does happen from time to time, unfortunately. Not that high, but on meets, but.
One thing I know proctors get a little concerned about sometimes is when they are doing their consensus scores at the end and talking about the beer, they may not have detected the same things. Newsflash, we're all human, we all have different palates. Don't worry about it. That's what the process is all about, is getting 2 or 3 different opinions about what that beer is about. So don't be real concerned that your comments don't line up. It really is okay. And a lot of times it can help the graders.
Yeah.
Because the examinee's comments may have the same type of proportion too. So yeah, don't sweat it.
So are you saying that proctor sheets can vary more than 7 points?
Yes, they can. What proctors will do, if you have a proctor, what proctors will do is they will write down all their scores, and what they'll do is then they'll come to a consensus overall score. And that is what is graded against. So
no changing the base sheet.
No changing the base sheet at all whatsoever, yeah. So if Al, Randy, and I are scoring a set, and Al does 20, I do 40, and Randy does, like, say, a 35 or something like that, we might consent somewhere around a 32 or something like to that effect. And that 32 is what is actually is what is graded against. Okay. Yeah.
But it's not necessarily an average.
No.
And I've had situations where in the consensus forming part of this, the person who's on the low end is said, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Of course I'm going to come up to match you.
Yes, and that actually happened in the one earlier today with us. There were 2 of us that were higher, one was a little, 2 of us that were lower and one of us was higher. And the one person looked at both of ours and we kind of mentioned it, and he's like, yeah, we'll take it down a notch. So we can sense it a point lower than that. So one other thing I mentioned here too, that comment we were kind of mentioning before we got into this question was, yesterday we had a sarsaparilla in a cider. And wow, that was just a whole bunch of different adjectives that hit the score sheet. And it was, that's one of the areas where, I got it as Band-Aids, just huge Band-Aids, as well as the root beer, and other people were getting different attributes with it as well too. And even when we were done, we just had a general conversation because it was a trial exam. We had a general conversation with everybody in the room, and just the number of adjectives that came out of just the proctors and the examinees themselves was just unbelievable. So that's another good reason why you kind of want to keep your comments to yourself first, so that way, if I have 3 and Randy has 3 and Al has 3, that's 9 adjectives that kind of do help the examinees out a little bit, especially when you got something like a sarsaparilla, which could just be a cornucopia of different things coming out.
Not only keeping your comments to yourself, but sometimes, you know, when you're at a table, you'll taste that 13 beer that the guy is specially prepared just for you, and you know, try to avoid that too.
Oh, that's one other thing, yeah.
Verbal cues.
That's a good thing, yeah. I tend to lose my poker face when I judge once in a while. Getting a whiff of something, like a skunk or something, tends to, you know, it's usually that's a good idea why the proctors are away from everybody else in a different room. But yeah, when you're proctor to proctor, they might be like, what's up with that? So, you know, like I said, you know, I mentioned a bad example of myself before. I should have put Bob on that sheet earlier today. Nobody ever said in the room, so I don't feel that bad about it afterwards. But you know, comment on every little minor aspect. You know, if you get something in there, you know, get that down on that sheet. Let people know about it. I'm trying to think. I had an example for this, but it's skipping my brain right now. Where it was just a very minute kind of thing that was on there. And then after in conversation, when we did the consensus discussion with the examinees, they were like, oh yeah, one or two of them got that. And I'm like, okay, well, it's kind of good that I noted that because that helps them out a little bit. Not that we're trying to, you know, scooch their scores or anything, but to be fair to them and their studying time and everything that they put into it. Nonverbal, I picked up on what Al kind of mentioned a second ago. Fully complete the consensus sheet as well too, guys. There's a lot of times when people will put their scores on there, so using the example before between us three, they'll just write their individual scores. They won't put a consensus score down. And then that leaves it up to the ED or the AD, you know, I'm sorry, the ED or, you know, trying to reach out to the exam, you know, folks and trying to get something done or just coming up with an average. So again, remember when you're proctoring these exams, the people before you have put quite a few months of time and investment ahead of time to do this. The least we can do as proctors and as experienced judges who have gone through the same kind of process, being empathetic to their needs, is, you know, do the best job we possibly can and make sure that we tidy up those things and include those kinds of things like the consensus scores. Things to remember, other graders and the exam administrators, no one will see the proctor sheets. This is one of the things I mentioned to the exam administrators today, because my language, and I don't know if Josh is here too as well, but our language was kind of flowery. It wasn't a type of score sheet that goes back to the grade, back to the examinee, I'm sorry, back to the entrant, like we typically do when we're grading and judging in a competition. So go ahead and don't be rude as all, you know, meow, but get the point across. You know, I mean, one of the things I said today on one of them was, it was a good double. It had all the aspects of a double, but nothing married together. Nothing was complex. And that's not something you would definitely, you know, put like that. That's how I put it on that sheet, just so the graders would kind of understand, just like the grader was sitting across from me and drinking the same beer, and we were talking about it right there. You know, they were getting it without the filter on, kind of thing. Another thing too is under no circumstances should the exam administrator be handing that sheet out to anybody. It shouldn't go back. Granted, there might be some people that donate some brews. We've had professionals give us some of their brews and want to get feedback, and we put it into the exam and to see what the examinees say about it, as well as the proctors. Give them scores, give them ideas. You can talk about vague references and stuff like that back. Don't ever give out those sheets if you're an exam administrator or anything like that. They're not supposed to go anywhere but to the AHA. You get distributed to the graders and the EDs from that point on. So the other thing that we've noticed on some of these as well too, and we'll kind of try to emphasize kind of the samples here, it does say on the overall section in there to go ahead and provide corrective feedback, but you're not supposed to put detailed corrective feedback in there on when it comes to the actual how you would fix the beer. You can put things in there like saying could benefit from a little bit more hop bitterness or something like that. Again, like we're kind of talking. But other than that, anything else that's go in there detail-wise and how to fix it with, 20 pounds more roast malt or 20, whatever, it doesn't do the graders a darn bit of good. The other thing too as well, don't be afraid to use the guidelines to verify aspects of the style as well too, okay? We all know that each of the styles has certain characteristics that really, you know, speak to that particular style itself. In tuck, does it meet it, does it miss it, okay? The big thing was, you know, appropriate versus acceptable in the past. I know that's changed over a little bit, the 2015 guidelines a little bit, but, you know, that was one other area as well too, was, you know, let the graders know, was this acceptable or was it appropriate? You know, does it balance? If there's oxidation in there, you know, is it decrementing it or is it helping? You know, that's another thing too as well, depending upon which style you're actually critiquing at that particular point in time. You know, let them know. You might say high, medium, or low. Okay, great. But then in the summary, say the oxidation kind of blended well, and the sherry notes contributed to yada 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 kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with that. The key thing, remember, is think like a grader. And that's why I asked the question before. If you haven't graded, highly encourage you to grade. You get a lot out of it. You learn more and more and more. You get to see different things from different regions, different countries, parts of the world. That was an eye-opening experience, you know, getting a couple of sets from, you know, Europe, Spain, even one from Argentina. You know, that does change your perspective on things a little bit. So definitely become a grader and think like a grader as well too when you're putting this down. You know, if you were a grader, you know, could you look at your sheet at the end of it? And this is one of the things that's actually in the grading instructions. This is the second line right here. You know, if you were a grader, you know, could you create a subset of 6 to 8 descriptors to do the perception? Can I get that out of yours to some extent? Now, I'm not saying mine the thing to death and start making crap up, okay? But I'm saying is, you know, did you do your job? Did you actually go in there and try to find enough that they could pull enough information to satisfy that requirement when they go to grade? Okay. If you recall this beer and 3 months later, could you do so after reading the Proctor sheet? So if you proctored this one, boom, put it down, walk away 3 months later, pick that sheet up, oh, I remember that, yeah, we did this, and it had this, and oh yeah, this person, you know, that should be able to trigger all that back, okay? Because remember also too as a proctor, I'm not looking for proctors to take 3 hours, okay? But you don't have a time limit. You're not on the 15-minute clock, okay? You have all the time in the world that day. Exam administrators are wanting to kill me right now for saying that, okay? But you have extra time. You're not on the clock, okay? There's nothing wrong with taking a little bit of extra time. That next sample will wait, put another cup on top of it, lock in the aromas, and, you know, go on your way. The other thing too is if you close your eyes and someone reads your sheet to you, could you virtually perceive the sample on what you hear? So it's a little bit different. You're shutting off one of your senses and you're hearing stuff, and you know, can you picture it in your brain? Can you understand what's going on with that whole experience if you were to close your eyes and come back to you? So this is the current sheet. I kind of broke it up for people so that you'll be able to read here a little bit. I mean, obviously you guys know about, you know, filling out the stuff up there. This is also important too as well, guys. We've seen this a little bit on the exams. It's pretty simple, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, please don't not fill it out, because that does cause a little bit of a problem once they get scanned and moved around. The other thing is too is if you're noting stuff here, and I shouldn't really have to say this because this is one of the things that gets you on the exam, but if you note something here, make sure you note it there too. That isn't, you know, just for flaws. That's if you get an ester, you know, in an ale, you know, you're saying it's estery, then check off the box and let us know. Because some graders, when they get that, they're like, well, the proctor didn't check it off, but, you know, and the student, the examinee didn't, so, well, no, really, the examinee is going to get knocked for it, and, you know, the proctor should too a little bit. So, you get a little extra space as well on the lines itself, notice that. So, you know, use every little aspect if you can, but just write legibly. I'm not asking people to start you know, writing everything out or anything like that, but, you know, write legibly as well too. Take your time. Take 20 minutes of your, okay, if you have to, but take your time, write legibly, because it gets scanned and then it gets emailed and all that kind of good stuff, and by the time you get it as a grader, I mean, had a heck of a time just, who tries reading through a Proctor sheet and gets so frustrated with it, they just move on. We've all done it, okay? All right, you gotta force yourself to go back and read that sucker over and over and over again, so. And this is the consensus sheet right now that's out and about. I know I just saw a different one. Someone sent me some examples and I saw a different form of the consensus sheet lately. But it's, you know, it's pretty simple. This is the one we did, you know, I did for cider and for beer this morning. You know, just go ahead and make sure you know, write down each judge's score and then the consensus on the bottom. Pretty simple. Okay, so right now I got 5 Proctor sheet examples. These are all based on real life events. They've been rewritten in my handwriting, so nobody can, you know, identify them. The names have been hidden to protect the innocent, or the contributors, I should say, to this. If I know, you know, there's a good possibility some people in the room who did it, but I did change the language on some of them too, so it's not meant to look anybody to make them look bad. It's just made to hit a point home. Okay. So with that being said, what I'd kind of like to do here for this first one is I'm going to read it to you, and I want you to try to picture this beer, okay, as I'm reading it to you, and hopefully I don't screw it up and say something wrong, and I'll be hearing about it for the rest of the week. So close your eyes. The aroma. A faint, spicy yeast character is initially manifested here, fulfilled by a hint of malt, and all and clearly perceived. Appearance, medium white head, yellow in color, slightly cloudy. Flavor, spicy yeast notes are the dominant flavor and come through in a soft, clean manner. Thank you. Can't read my handwriting. And although clean and somewhat unshuttered, I believe is what it was. No off flavors or faults.
Understated.
Understated, yeah, not somewhat understated. No off flavors and no faults. The mouthfeel. Thin to medium body, alcohol warmth noted, well conditioned. Overall impression, well brewed, very clean, a bit on the light side of the style on both flavor and strength. What are you left? You're left with questions in your head, aren't you?
Yeah.
A lot. A lot. Okay? And that's the kind of situation you kind of want to avoid. Okay? Yeah. Now, and that's for 35, okay? Now I'm going to read another one to you. You guys can, you know, leave them open, close them, however you want to do it, okay? But here's the same beer, but a different Proctor. Belgian triple, low sulfur note, poured, dissipated quickly, moderate spicy phenols, black pepper, a touch of clove, a slight note of banana, a touch of citrus, orange pith, a bit of lemon, low butter, bready cracker, malt, soft alcohol, bit of honey, and a touch of spicy hops, no DMS or diacetyl.
That's great.
Yes. Okay. Appearance deep yellow, slight haze, soft pillowy head with small, tight paper white bubbles. Fails somewhat quickly, but sticks on edges with nice lacing. A melange for flavor, a melange of spices, pepper, clove, bit of nutmeg, nice fruit, ester, citrus, touch of banana, low but prescient notes of cracker malt, toasty, bready, faint spicy hops, herbal balance towards the malt with phenols stealing the show, fairly well attenuated with just a bit of sweetness lingering and a touch of alcohol warmth on the finish. Medium body, medium body, medium carbonation, tad low style, missing that touch of carbonic bite, pleasant note of alcohol, not hot, slightly phenolic character, lingers beyond sip. Overall impression, nice beer, complex blend of spicy phenols, pithy citrus and cracker bready malt, pleasant alcohol, heat. Combination was a bit low, beer would be more lively on the palate, would be maybe a touch more hop character, may help shift the balance a bit to finish, tad too sweet. Overall, I think that was a pretty good Proctor sheet. The one place I think it might have lost a little bit was a little bit at the end in the overall. Yeah.
What did he score?
Score 38. So, the consensus, the scores were like right around each other, and there's the third one's coming up here as well too. And I'll let you guys kind of read it, and we can kind of poke some stuff in it as well too. But these were the two extremes in this particular set. Again, remember, I did change the language a little bit to hit home point. So, the other thing I noticed here too with them was I did represent it, there wasn't any of those items either were left unchecked on that one. Same thing here with this one, all this stuff was reinforced both below and above as well. So that does, to me, when I'm looking at it, just like you might be doing when you're grading, you can tell experience a little bit by how well the examinee hits everything, how they comment. You get some perceived experience or something like that with some additional thoroughness. And again, here, when I see this on a Proctor sheet, it's like, okay, this kind of gravitates me towards this person's comments a little bit more because they were, thinking more about it. This is from a set I administered 2 years ago. I thought this would be great beer. I went ahead and, for the 6th beer, I wanted to, there was different ones in the full flight category, but this one I thought, okay, let's give them a rock solid example of an Imperial IPA, and nothing came to mind better than 120-minute Dogfish IPA. It was the last beer in the whole thing, and I was particularly proud of it, and got it out there, and they got to the Proctors, and ooh boy, that did not go as I had planned. And there was one particular comment that made me think about this and why I came back to it, and we'll see it here in a little bit. It's one interesting character I want to point out to everybody when we go through these things here. So with this particular one here, we had 2 Proctors on this set, and this is how it kind of went. For the Imperial IPA, strong tropical hops, apricot, mango, moderate resin, low caddy, sweet caramel, and bready background malt, a bit of pith. Served with a 1/4 inch. I was impressed by that, by the way. Of creamy off-white head that wouldn't fade. The flavor, very sweet caramel, malt base with bready notes, medium sweet finish, moderate bitterness, moderate tropical fruit character with low resin caddy. So malty sweet, it's actually slightly malt balanced. Some spice, has a floral aftertaste. Full bodied, moderate, low carbonation, very creamy, moderate alcohol warmth, but not harsh or hot. Overall impression, the hops are pretty much all in the aroma. It's definitely Imperial, but just didn't balance the malt and let alone dominate it. Okay. To me, that worked very well. That worked great for the Proctors. Maybe a little bit more comments in the aroma, section there a little bit, but what this one example does do is it hits the important aspects of the style itself. And it does hit those home, and it does wrap it up pretty well here in the overall impression, talking about, what the person definitely thought about the brew itself. So, your take?
Yeah, basically the same, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, I thought you guys have seen this. My bad. I'm like talking, I got this thing like maxed up here, and what the heck? My bad. There you go.
There we go.
I'm sorry. Nobody says anything. They just want to hear me read. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm not just showing up my reading skills, boys and girls. So that was that one there. Same set, same exact, different Proctor, same beer. A little bit more in depth. This person's known for being a big foodie in our area. There were comments about the cattiness and the hops and the attributes before. This one a little bit went to talk about the dank a little bit, the guava, the kiwi, and all that. The different levels I was kind of mentioning before. The earlier one that I had a little bit. The pith, that's always important when it came to the Imperial IPA. I mentioned before the grassiness when dry hopping, but with today's nuking of beers with grapefruit type hops, that pithiness is something that also is a common characteristic that we're seeing in this particular style. So that would be a kind of an important thing to note there as well too. well as the esters as well, and the alcohol level. What got me about this particular one, what stands out here to people on this? What's that? American barley wine, exactly. That's what made me remember this particular set. I still remember it to this day. Yeah, when they were all done, they were filling out, they were writing up the consensus. They're like, "What was that last one?" And I told them what it was, and they're like, "No, it was like an American barley wine." I mean, and that's what it kind of had happened at the time. It had just been sitting on the shelf. Dogfish Head's made here by the time it got to Milwaukee and sat on the shelf at the liquor store, which I thought was, when I looked at it, I thought it was pretty fresh. And you know, unfortunately, day of, you run into some of those problems if you've ever administered an exam, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So you go with what you got at that particular point in time, and that's what we did. So, okay, to recap, grading process, it starts with the proctor itself. The whole thing kicks off there. Very critical point. I think we brought that home and emphasized that quite a bit today. You know, don't just take it for granted. It's not just easy points, you know, for sitting down in the proctor's chair kind of thing to help you advance to a grandmaster in the future. So it's with you. You're the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the palate. I say ears now because of the presentation earlier today. Don't expect you to put ears on there. Don't put that on there. Brian's going to yell at me if he starts seeing that. Comment on every aspect of the sample, the presence or absence on there, when applicable, you know, section and style, the primary, secondary, and tertiary characteristics. You know, we grade people on how well they hit those attributes underneath each of the sections. It's a shame when proctors don't provide the same type of information. That's another common miss as well too. We see is when they don't, you know, when they forget to comment on bitterness. Okay, that's something we should all be doing. So make sure you're hitting all those as well too. Again, detailed suggestions to fix are completely useless. They don't do anybody any good. It's not going to go back to the person who provided the sample or anything like that. You know, talk about how it could maybe be made better, or what might be missing or lacking, or what you might have been looking for. But don't go into details and write a new recipe or anything like that for the person, or a roadmap to correct it, or you know, recommending a yeast sample or what have you. You laugh, it's happened. If you close your eyes and you know, read and someone reads your sheet to you, you know, could you virtually perceive that sample again? Little exercise you can do to yourself. Think about that when you're reading that. If my eyes were closed and I was hearing this information come to me, would I be able to absorb it? Will it be relevant, and could I mentally put the picture together about the experience itself? In proctors, if you haven't graded it, like I said, if you haven't graded it always helps to look at things from the opposite view. Okay, so if you're a proctor and you become a grader, then you realize exactly what is missing. That helps you understand and you become a better proctor. Same thing happens if you're a grader, if you're a proctor. Once you become the grader, you realize exactly what, if I was grading this is what the information I would want to be able to pass on to that grader as well too. So if you are proctoring in your local areas, remind your exam administrator it's a good thing to have 3 proctors lined up for every exam. Perfectly acceptable to have it. It helps out a lot. And number 2, if something happens to one of the proctors, you got the 2 still. So the 3rd always helps. So yeah, have 3 proctors. Thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate it. We hope you had a good time with it. Tell your friends.